The FBI director is grilled on Capitol Hill for recommending no indictment of Hillary Clinton for her mishandling of classified information. GOP nominee Donald Trump came to Capitol Hill to try to unify House and Senate leaders. In an exclusive interview, the man at the center of it all, House Speaker Paul Ryan, will discuss. And in the wake of increasing racial tension here in the U.S., 2 new police shootings. Dr. Alveda King joins us to assess what happened in Louisiana and Minnesota. And finally, EWTN Rome Bureau Chief Joan Lewis will tell us the do's and don'ts of a Roman pilgrimage and discuss her new book, The World Over, begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. A big show for you tonight. Speaker Paul Ryan, Dr. Alveda King, and Joan Lewis are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show or if you have a question, I'll be live tweeting throughout. Find me on Twitter at Raymond Arroyo, or you can email me at worldover@ewtn.com. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. FBI Director James Comey was grilled by members of Congress on Capitol Hill Thursday after announcing earlier this week that he would not recommend criminal charges against Hillary Clinton over her mishandling of classified emails when she was Secretary of State. Comey said Tuesday, just 3 days after FBI agents interviewed Clinton, that there was no clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information. He did acknowledge evidence that Clinton and her cohorts were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. And he suggested that hostile actors gained access to email accounts of those whom Secretary Clinton was in regular contact with from her personal account. House Speaker Paul Ryan said Comey's decision defies explanation and leaves many unanswered questions. Comey justified his decision during testimony before the House Oversight Committee. He claimed the statute in question has been rarely used to prosecute cases like this and refused to discuss the discrepancy between Mrs. Clinton's public statements and his findings. Meanwhile, Attorney General Loretta Lynch said on Wednesday that no charges will be brought against anyone in the email probe. More on this and all the latest from Capitol Hill in our next segment. And Donald Trump appears to be moving closer to choosing a vice presidential running mate. Among those on the short list, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, and New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. A beaming Gingrich appeared with Trump at a campaign rally in Ohio on Wednesday. During the rally, Trump had this to say.
Form or another, Newt Gingrich is going to be involved with our government. That I can tell you. Okay?
He went on to say if Gingrich were his VP pick, nobody is beating him in the debates. Meanwhile, Senators Bob Corker of Tennessee and Joni Ernst of Iowa took themselves out of contention after appearing at Trump rallies earlier. After rumors of their potential candidacy circulated, both said they can better serve the country in their current positions. Trump insists that he's looking at least 10 people for the job, including 2 generals. And racial tensions are high following a pair of police shootings caught on video this week. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on Tuesday, police shot and killed a 37-year-old African-American man outside a convenience store. Authorities say officers were called to the scene by a homeless man claiming that a man with a gun had threatened him outside the store. A cell phone video that went viral on the internet shows police wrestling the man to the ground and shots being fired soon thereafter. A second video, taken by the store owner, shows a gun was taken from the victim's body after the shooting. The 2 officers, who are both white, have been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. And on Wednesday, a 32-year-old black man in Minnesota was shot and killed by police during a traffic stop. The driver informed police that he had a gun, which he had a license for, but when he purportedly reached to retrieve his ID, an officer opened fire, killing the man. The aftermath of the shooting was broadcast live on Facebook by the victim's companion, who was in the car at the time. The U.S. Justice Department is looking into both cases. More on that later in the show. And Great Britain appears set to have her first female prime minister since Margaret Thatcher, over a quarter century ago. Conservatives Theresa May and Andrea Leadsom will battle it out for the post after the other top contender, Michael Gove, was eliminated from running earlier this week. The Conservative Party's membership will now decide between Ms. May, who was a Remain campaigner and is the Home Affairs Secretary, and Ms. Leadsom, the Energy Minister and Brexit supporter. The final party vote is scheduled for September 9th. And Islam's holy month of Ramadan came to a bloody and deadly end with more jihadi violence around the world this week. Starting in Baghdad, militant bombers trapped shoppers in an inferno of fire that killed at least 250 people in what was one of the deadliest single attacks in Iraq in the last 10 years. In Bangladesh, 22 were killed at a popular restaurant in an upscale Dhaka neighborhood frequented by diplomats and foreigners. Eyewitnesses said the attackers tortured some of the hostages before killing them for failing to recite the Quran. Including the recent nightclub attack in Orlando and other attacks worldwide, 350 people have been killed by suspected jihadists during the month of Ramadan. And for the first time in more than 8 decades, the Muslim call to prayer was issued inside Istanbul's Hagia Sophia. The architectural wonder was originally built as a basilica church for the Patriarch of Constantinople in 537. When the Byzantine Empire fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, the basilica was converted into a mosque. It was used for Muslim prayer for more than 5 centuries until 1931, and then it was reopened as a museum. For the last 4 years, the Turkish government has allowed a call to prayer from Hagia Sophia's minarets outside the former church. The July 1st call of prayer, just days after the Istanbul airport terror attack, was televised and broadcast nationwide. A spokesman for the government of neighboring Greece expressed concern over the move, saying it is, quote, obviously not compatible with the principles that should govern a modern secular state, end quote. And in Rome, Pope Francis appointed Chicago Archbishop Blaise Cupich to the influential Congregation for Bishops. In his new role, Cupich will have a substantial voice in shaping the next generation of Catholic bishops here in the U.S. and around the world. The Congregation for Bishops is easily one of the 2 or 3 most important and powerful Vatican departments, an appointment to which usually signals favor with the reigning pontiff. In 2013, Pope Francis removed several members from the congregation who were seen as more traditionally conservative, most famously Cardinal Raymond Burke. The Cupich appointment appears to signal a more progressive direction for the influential body. The congregation is currently led by Cardinal Marc Ouellet of Quebec, a papal contender originally appointed by Pope Benedict XVI. And Pope Francis met Wednesday with the parents of Bo Solomon, the U.S. college student murdered last week in Rome. Nick and Jody Solomon had an unscheduled private meeting with the Pope on Wednesday morning. According to an official statement, Pope Francis expressed his heartfelt participation in their mourning and his closeness in prayer to the Lord for the tragic death of the youth. The 19-year-old Wisconsin University student's body was discovered on Monday in the Tiber River, just 3 days after arriving in Rome for summer courses. Authorities said Solomon was robbed and murdered. A 40-year-old homeless man has been arrested on suspicion of the murder. Our prayers go out to the Solomon family. And Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI is set to release a wide-ranging memoir about his life and papacy. According to the Italian daily Corriere della Sera, the book-length interview examines the life of Joseph Ratzinger from his childhood through his work as head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith to his papacy and retirement. In it, he discusses much, including what he describes as an active gay lobby that attempted to influence his decisions as Pope. Benedict also discusses his surprise at the election of Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio as Pope Francis. Titled Final Conversations, the book will be published worldwide on September 9th. And the Vatican's top liturgical official made headlines this week with a special request for priests. Start celebrating Mass facing east, in the same direction as the people. Prefect for the Congregation for Liturgy, Cardinal Robert Sarah, is recommending that priests use the Ad Orientem posture whenever possible, beginning this Advent season. The Cardinal made the comments at a liturgical conference in London and is encouraging pastors to prepare the faithful for the change by explaining the significance of facing east. He said, quote, "It is very important that we return as soon as possible to a common orientation of priests and the faithful turned together in the same direction, eastwards, or at least towards the apse, to the Lord who comes," end quote. And the head of the U.S. Bishops' Committee on the implementation of Amoris Laetitia, the Pope's exhortation on the family, has issued new guidelines for his own archdiocese. Philadelphia Archbishop Charles Chaput has confirmed the traditional church teaching that divorced and civilly remarried Catholics, as well as cohabitating unmarried couples, may receive the Eucharist only if they refrain from sexual intimacy. Using colloquial terms, the guidelines state that living as brother and sister is necessary for the divorced and civilly remarried to receive reconciliation in the sacrament of penance, which could then open the way to the Eucharist. Archbishop Chaput acknowledges that this is a hard teaching, but says that anything less misleads people about the nature of the Eucharist and the Church. The Philadelphia guidelines were issued to follow up on Amoris Laetitia, which summarize the work of the Synod on the Family. Archbishop Chaput was among the prelates who participated in that synod.